In my third year of running a flower shop to support my boyfriend, he went bankrupt again. The first time he went bankrupt, I sold the house my grandmother left me and paid off $700,000 for him. The second time, I dug out the savings account my mother had left me as my wedding fund and paid off another $1.6 million. The third time, I looked at the lost, empty look in his eyes and held the number of my billionaire father, the man I had long since considered dead to me, wondering whether I should call him. But that night, I accidentally saw the messages in a small group chat on his tablet. "Mr. Hart, how much should we put on the repayment contract for this bankruptcy? Make it $10 million. Otherwise, that flower shop girl will pay it all off in one go again, and where's the fun in that?" Mr. Hart really knows how to play. I heard that flower shop girl tends flowers by day and tends to you by night. No wonder you never get tired of her. I put down his tablet and called my billionaire father. "Isn't this what you wanted? To force me to inherit the family business and marry your protege? Fine. I'll marry him. Have somebody come pick me up in 3 days." Chapter 1. After I hung up the call with my father, Lucas Hart came home with a signed IOU in his hand. "Nora, I'm sorry. This time I owe another $10 million. I'm so useless." He was a good actor. In the past, that lost look in his eyes would always earn him the same answer from me. "It's okay. We'll work hard together. We'll pay it off eventually." But now, I only stared in silence at the half-hidden watch on his wrist. It looked ordinary, but I had seen it in a magazine before. It was worth $20 million. Lucas owned a watch worth $20 million, yet supposedly could not repay $10 million. I had nothing, but for him, I had been considering borrowing from loan sharks. My sincerity had become the reason he dared to play with me so recklessly. Seeing me stare at the watch on his wrist, Lucas calmly pulled me into his arms. "It's fake, Nora. When I have money, I'll buy you whatever you want." Because he thought I was poor and knew nothing about luxury goods, he did not even need to think hard when he lied to me. I looked away, only to see another message pop up on the tablet beside him. "Mr. Hart, what is the girl planning to sell this time to pay the debt? Flowers, her shop, or herself? A woman Mr. Hart has played with must taste pretty good. If she's selling herself, I'll buy the first night." The messages after that were flooded with filthy jokes and people piling on. In the 3 years I had been with Lucas, I had repaid the debts from 2 of his so-called bankruptcies. The first time, I sold the house my grandmother left me. Lucas held me and promised he would give me a home. But we lived for 2 years in a basement apartment that cost $400 a month, and then he came back with another $2 million debt. I still did not blame him. I took out the wedding money my mother had saved for me and filled the hole. He knelt on one knee and told me that accepting my wedding fund meant he was already my husband. He said he would love me forever and treat me well. Every promise he made had been a lie from beginning to end. Lucas's attention was drawn to the constant notifications on his phone. He glanced at me. Seeing that I was not looking at him, he opened his phone and read the group messages. Soon, his brows tightened and his mouth pressed into a hard line. He tapped on the screen a few times. The tablet beside me showed the message he had sent to the group. "All of you shut the hell up. Just wait and watch the show." Lucas put down his phone. After a long silence, he clung to me again. "Nora, I promise this is the last time. Once this debt is paid, I'll marry you, okay?" Looking at the sincerity on his face, I suddenly found it almost funny. How precious did he think I was, that a rich heir would go to such lengths to deceive me? He even did not hesitate to say he would marry me. At first, I had wanted to lay everything out and ask him whether playing me like this was fun. But now, I did not even have the strength to question him. I calmly pushed him away. "But Lucas, I don't have any money left." Lucas froze. Maybe he had not expected that answer from me. After all, in his mind, I should have been doing everything possible to pay off his debt. Chapter 2. But very quickly, anger replaced the look on his face. "Nora, do you think I'm useless too? Do you think I'll never succeed, just like the rest of them? I knew it. I was wrong about you." After saying that, he stormed out and slammed the door. I watched his back as he left and understood that he was trying to force me to compromise. But I did not call him back. I even picked up my phone and blocked every way he could contact me. Then I picked up the IOU. There was no borrower's name and no fingerprint. It was fake at a glance, yet I had stupidly believed it twice. I laughed at myself and called the property agent. "Hello, please help me sublet the flower shop on Central Street." I had opened that flower shop to support Lucas. Now that I no longer wanted him, there was no need to keep the shop running. Besides, I was leaving. The next morning, I stayed home to pack. Looking around the small, dark rental, I realized there was almost nothing worth taking. Birthday cards thrown away by bakeries, pretty stones picked up from the roadside, a ring folded out of paper. Lucas had given these things to me as surprises. But every time I opened one of those little surprises, he looked just as surprised as I did. Now that I thought about it, those so-called gifts were probably things he had casually ordered someone to put together. He likely did not even know what was inside. The only decent gift he had ever given me was a necklace he bought for $80 from a street stall after his first startup supposedly succeeded. Back then, I thought he had wasted money and got angry with him for some time. Lucas only looked at me with amusement. He said I was silly. He asked what would happen if he really became rich one day, and I still could not bear to spend money. At the time, I thought he was being tender toward me. Now, I knew he genuinely thought I was stupid. In our endless chat history, Lucas had called me stupid 517 times. When I ran across 3 streets to buy his favorite late-night snack, he said, "Why is Nora so stupid?" When he had a fever and I put my only raincoat over him before carrying him to the hospital, he said, "She's so stupid, it's almost funny." Even when I lay in his arms and imagined our future together, he still wrote in the group, "Nora is stupid beyond saving. She's this poor and still dreams about a future with me." Even through cold text, I could imagine the contempt and mockery on his face when he typed those words. But it did not matter anymore. From now on, Lucas Hart would no longer be part of Nora Bell's future. I kept packing, but by the end, the large suitcase was still empty. The trash can, however, was full. I looked once more at the home I had lived in for 2 years. The peeling walls stained with watermarks, the chair with one broken leg, the bed made from bricks and wooden boards. When things were a little better, I had thought about fixing up this home properly. But Lucas refused every time. He said once we had money, we would not live here anymore, so there was no point decorating. I believed every promise he made, then guarded this broken-down home like a fool, waiting for those promises to come true. Thinking of that, I suddenly felt it was all meaningless. I closed my suitcase. The property agent called. "Miss Bell, I can't make the decision about subletting the flower shop. You'll need to speak to the landlord yourself." At 3 that afternoon, I arrived on time at the office building where I was supposed to meet the agent. In the ornate hallway, through a door left slightly open, I saw Lucas. He was wearing a well-fitted suit, head lowered as he played with his phone. Beside him, a well-dressed woman leaned intimately against his shoulder. I recognized her almost immediately. 2 days ago, my flower shop had received an order for 999 roses. Because the customer specifically requested that the thorns not be removed, my hands were covered in blood by the time I finished wrapping them. When I personally took a cab to deliver them, the woman who received the flowers was this woman and Chase. In the center of the roses was a card the customer had requested. "To the love of my life," and "From LH." Only at that moment did I realize LH was Lucas Hart. He knew very well that because I needed money, I would never turn down such a large order. Chapter 3. So he had made those demands on purpose, just to watch me run in circles for him. The thought almost made me laugh through my tears. After I got home that day, I had even excitedly told Lucas that I had earned a lot of money. When he bandaged my injured hands with such concern, was he calling me stupid in his heart again? Was he thinking I looked like a joke? As I wiped away the tears at the corners of my eyes, the agent arrived. Seeing me standing at the door, he asked in confusion, "Miss Bell, the landlord is inside. Why aren't you going in?" I stared at him in shock, tears still in my eyes. "Who did you say? The landlord? Lucas Hart?" The agent looked even more confused. "Yes. You didn't know? The entire Central Street belongs to Mr. Hart." I looked at Lucas not far away, and the painful memory buried deep inside me surged up all at once. After I helped Lucas repay his second debt, I spent a long time unable to make ends meet. I could not even pay the rent. 4 or 5 burly men crowded the entrance of the flower shop and forced me to pay. They smashed every flower in the shop. They even stepped on my cat, ignoring his cries as they pressed down harder. That cat had been with me for 12 years. To me, he was no longer just a pet. He was family, as important as Lucas had been. I sobbed and knelt on the floor, begging them to spare him. In the 3 years I ran the shop, I had been forced for rent and protection money more times than I could count. But I never told Lucas. I did not want to pressure him. This time, I had been so afraid that I called him, crying so hard I could barely breathe. I asked him, "Lucas, what should I do? Please save Milo. Save him." Lucas knew exactly how much that cat meant to me, yet after a long silence, he only said he was sorry. I watched with my own eyes as those men trampled my cat to death. I held him in my arms and felt him slowly grow cold and stiff. Just like when my mother died in my arms, I was powerless. Even then, I did not hate Lucas. I only hated my own uselessness. But now, the truth lay before me. The landlord who had forced me to pay rent was Lucas. The person who could have saved Milo with one word was also Lucas. But he did not save him, and Milo died. I had to grit my teeth to keep a sob from escaping. I ran out of the office building, hailed a cab, and told the driver to go to the airport. In the car, my hands trembled as I called my father. After 27 years, the only person I could rely on now was the father I had once least wanted to acknowledge. Dad, can you come get me now? Please. At the same time, Lucas walked out of the office with and his group of friends. His head was lowered, his eyes fixed on the chat window between us. For 2 whole days, I had not sent him a single message. Irritated, he took out a cigarette, but when he remembered I disliked the smell of smoke on him, he put it away again. One of his close friends slung an arm over his shoulder and looked at the dark screen with obvious amusement. What's wrong, Lucas? The girl can't pay this debt and doesn't want to play with you anymore? A flash of anger crossed Lucas's eyes. He shoved his friend's arm away. Who said that? Nora loves me so much. Maybe she's running around somewhere right now trying to scrape together money for me. Just wait. Once I leave her hanging for a few days, she'll definitely cough up the money. As soon as he said that, the agent nearby heard my name and came over. Nora Bell? Mr. Hart, you know Ms. Bell? Perfect timing. She wants to sublet the flower shop, and I was worried you might not approve. Lucas frowned. He vaguely felt that the uneasiness building inside him these past few days was about to find its answer. He forced himself to stay calm and pretended to ask casually, "The flower shop is doing fine. Why would she sublet it?" The agent smiled ingratiatingly, completely unaware of the weight of his words. Ms. Bell said she's tired of running the shop and is going home to get married. The words of the property agent did not reach Lucas's ears until I was already miles away, watching the city lights blur through the rain-streaked window of a black sedan. My father's assistant had been waiting for me at the corner of Central Street. He didn't ask about the single, half-empty suitcase in my hand, nor did he comment on the dried blood under my fingernails, the remnants of wrapping 999 thorned roses for the woman who now held Lucas's arm. Miss Bell, the assistant, a quiet man named Mr. Vance, said as he opened the passenger door. "Your father is waiting at the private hangar." "Thank you, Julian," I whispered. My voice sounded hollow, like wind passing through a ruined house. I pulled my threadbare cardigan tighter around my shoulders. For 3 years, I had saved every penny, buying my clothes from thrift shops and eating expired bread from the bakery next door, all so Lucas could start over. I had believed his tears. I had believed his desperation. As the car climbed the highway toward the airport, my phone began to vibrate in my pocket. Lucas. I didn't answer. I didn't block him yet. I wanted to see how long the performance would last. A text message popped up. "Nora, where are you? I came back to the apartment and your clothes are gone. Stop playing around. I'm already stressed enough about the 10 million. Don't make me worry about you too." A minute later, another. "Is this because I got angry yesterday? I was just stressed, Nora. You know how much pressure I'm under. Come back. I'll make it up to you." I stared at the screen. There was no warmth left in my chest, only a vast, freezing void. How easily the words of concern slipped from his tongue, the very same tongue that had typed, "Nora is stupid beyond saving," into a group chat of laughing heirs. By the time we reached the private terminal, the rain had turned into a downpour. Julian held a large black umbrella over my head as we walked toward the sleek, silver private jet idling on the tarmac. At the bottom of the air stairs stood my father, Richard Bell. He looked older than I remembered, his hair silvered at the temples, but his posture was as rigid and unyielding as iron. He was a man who had built an empire on cold calculations, a man I had hated for years because he refused to show my dying mother the softness she deserved. But standing there in the rain, looking at his stern, familiar face, I realized something bitter. My father's coldness was an open fortress. Lucas's warmth was a decorated trap. "You look terrible, Nora," Richard said, his voice cutting through the roar of the jet engines. "I know," I said, stepping onto the stairs. "The marriage contract with the Vance family is drawn up," he continued, turning to walk into the cabin. "Adrian is already on board. If you step onto this plane, there is no turning back. You will leave the flower shop, the boy, and your sentimentality in the mud where they belong." "I know," I repeated. I stepped into the warm, leather-scented cabin. Sitting in one of the wide armchairs was a young man in a charcoal gray suit. He had sharp, intelligent eyes, a jawline that looked carved from marble, and a quiet, lethal presence. Adrian Vance, my father's protege, the man destined to co-inherit the Bell Group beside me. Adrian looked up from his tablet. His eyes swept over my faded clothes, my pale face, and the small, red scratches on my hands. There was no mockery in his gaze, only a cool, assessing curiosity. "Miss Bell," Adrian said, rising to offer his hand. "I've heard a great deal about you." "I doubt any of it was good," I said, taking his hand. His grip was firm and steady. "On the contrary," Adrian murmured, his eyes lingering on the bandages on my palms. "I heard you were remarkably loyal. It's a rare trait in our circle. A shame it was wasted on a parasite." I let go of his hand and sat down opposite him. It won't be wasted anymore. As the plane taxied toward the runway, my phone buzzed one last time. It was a voice note from Lucas. I pressed it to my ear.
Nora.
The agent said you're subletting the shop? What the hell does he mean you're going home to get married? Who are you marrying? You're mine, Nora. You can't just leave me with this debt. Answer me. His voice was cracked with genuine panic, not because he loved me, but because his favorite toy had walked out of the sandbox and the $10 million joke had suddenly lost its punchline. I unlocked the phone, selected his contact, and pressed delete. Then, I turned the device off and handed it to Julian. Throw it away, I said. The jet lifted off into the dark, stormy sky, leaving the city and Lucas' heart behind in the rain. For the first 3 months at the Bell Estate in Chicago, I did not step outside. My father did not spare me. The day after we arrived, he hired 3 private tutors, a team of financial analysts, and a personal stylist. I woke up at 5 every morning to study corporate law, international trade, and asset management. If you are going to represent the Bell Group, my father told me over silent breakfast, you must learn to see people not as friends or lovers, but as balances on a ledger. The moment you let emotion dictate your investments, you become the prey. Adrian Vance was my constant shadow. He was 3 years older than me, a prodigy who had graduated from Wharton at 20 and had spent the last 5 years turning my father's logistics division into a global giant. One evening, as we sat in the library surrounded by thick binders of market reports, Adrian slid a manila folder across the dark mahogany table. What is this? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. A wedding gift, Adrian said smoothly. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, property deeds, and chat logs. All of them belonged to Lucas Hart. My breath hitched as I turned the pages. Adrian had done a thorough investigation. The first bankruptcy, Adrian explained, his voice calm and devoid of pity. Lucas's company didn't fail. He transferred the assets to a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands under his mother's maiden name. The $700,000 you raised by selling your grandmother's house? It was used to purchase a luxury yacht named the Nora. He kept the name as an inside joke with his friends. I closed my eyes, the memory of grandmother's cozy, sunlit cottage flashing before me. I had cried for days when I signed the deed away. The second bankruptcy, Adrian continued, tapping the page. The $1.6 million from your mother's wedding fund. It went directly into a high-yield investment portfolio. That watch he wears? The $20 million Patek Philippe? He bought it 3 weeks after you handed him the money. He told his friends you were so eager to play the savior that he didn't even have to try. I clutched the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. And the rent. The local thugs who harassed you at the flower shop were employees of a security firm owned by the Hart Group, Adrian said. They were paid to trash your shop. Lucas wanted to keep you desperate, keep you isolated, so you would never look up long enough to realize who was holding the leash. And Milo. My voice broke, the image of my sweet, orange cat dying in my arms flashing behind my eyelids. The men who stepped on your cat were instructed to make it look like an accident, to pressure you into signing a new lease with a higher interest rate, Adrian said softly. He reached out, his hand stopping just short of touching my trembling shoulder. Lucas was in the car down the street when it happened. He watched the whole thing through binoculars. A cold, heavy silence filled the library. I didn't cry. The tears had dried up months ago, replaced by a dark, simmering poison that ran through my veins. Adrian, I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet steadier than it had ever been. Yes, Nora? The Hart Group has been trying to secure a partnership with the Bell Group's maritime division, haven't they? A slow, dangerous smile spread across Adrian's face. For the last 2 years, it's the only thing keeping their shipping routes from going under. Without our ports, they lose 80% of their distribution. Good, I said, looking up to meet his gaze. Let's give them a meeting. In the 6 months following my disappearance, Lucas Hart's life had slowly begun to fray. He had expected me to return within 3 days. He had assumed I was hiding in some cheap motel, waiting for him to apologize so I could run back to him with whatever pitiful savings I had left. But 3 days turned into 3 weeks, and 3 weeks turned into 3 months. The flower shop on Central Street remained locked, its windows gathering dust, a for sublet sign yellowing in the corner. He had tried to trace my phone, but the signal had died the night I left. He had sent his men to my hometown, only to find that the grandmother's house had been demolished by its new owners to build a commercial plaza. I had no other living relatives. It was as if Nora Bell had simply evaporated from the face of the earth. She's probably living in some slum, crying herself to sleep, and Chase said, swirling her martini as she sat on Lucas's lap in his penthouse. You played her too hard, Lucas. $10 million was too much for a girl who makes her living selling daisies. Lucas didn't answer. He stared at the empty street below, his chest tightening with an unfamiliar, irritating ache. He didn't miss me, he told himself that every day. He missed the absolute, unquestioning devotion. He missed the hot soup waiting for him in the freezing basement apartment. He missed the way my eyes would light up when he gave me a cheap paper ring, a ring he had ordered his secretary to fold from a scrap of memo paper. "Shut up and," Lucas muttered, shoving her off his lap. "What is wrong with you lately?" And snapped, smoothing down her designer dress. "You've been insufferable since that flower girl left. It's not like she was actually important." "She has my money," Lucas lied, his jaw clenched. 2.3 million. She took it and ran. But he knew she hadn't. The money was sitting safely in his accounts. He had taken everything from her, and yet, her sudden, silent departure felt like the ultimate theft. She had stripped him of his audience. The game was no longer fun because the victim had refused to play. His phone rang. It was his father, Harold Hart. "Lucas, get to the office immediately," the older man barked, his voice tight with anxiety. "The Bell Group has finally responded to our proposal." Lucas's heart leaped. The Bell Group was the titan of the industry, an untouchable empire run by the reclusive billionaire Richard Bell. If the Harts could secure this maritime partnership, their family would ascend to the next tier of global wealth. Did they accept? Lucas asked eagerly. "They want to meet," Harold said. "But they've laid down a strict condition. We are to present our proposal to their newly appointed president of maritime operations at the annual Bell Group charity gala next week. The president is Richard Bell's sole heir, who has just returned from studying abroad." "No problem," Lucas said, a confident smirk returning to his face. "I'll handle it. I've never met an heir I couldn't charm." "Don't screw this up, Lucas," his father warned. "Our family's future depends on this contract." The grand ballroom of the Drake Hotel in Chicago was a sea of glittering diamonds, champagne towers, and high society whispers. Lucas Hart stood near the entrance, adjusting his tuxedo jacket. His watch, the $20 million Patek Philippe, gleamed under the crystal chandeliers. Beside him, and Chase clung to his arm, wearing an emerald silk gown that cost more than my flower shop's entire yearly inventory. "Look at this place," and whispered, her eyes wide with greed. "The Bell family is on another level. I heard the heir is a woman. Do you think she's single?" "Even if she is, she's out of your league, Lucas." One of his friends, Julian, laughed, clapping him on the back. "A true blue blood heiress. She probably eats caviar for breakfast and has never seen a dollar bill in her life." Lucas smiled, though his eyes scanned the crowd restlessly. Money is just numbers. People are the same, whether they're at the top or the bottom. They all want to be flattered. "Speaking of which," Julian said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "did you ever find that flower girl, Nora?" Lucas's smile tightened. "No, she's gone. Probably married some truck driver in Ohio." "Shame," Julian chuckled. "She really was a pretty little thing. If I knew she was going to run off, I would have offered to take her off your hands first." Lucas felt a sudden, sharp spike of annoyance, but before he could reply, the lights in the ballroom began to dim. At the top of the grand double staircase, the announcer took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the annual Bell Group Autumn Gala. Tonight, we are honored to introduce the newly appointed president of Bell Maritime Logistics and the sole heiress to the Bell Group estate." The crowd fell into a hushed, expectant silence. "Please welcome, Miss Nora Bell." Lucas froze. The glass of champagne in his hand tilted, the liquid spilling over his fingers, but he didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the top of the stairs. A woman was descending. She wore a custom-tailored, blood-red silk gown that clung to her figure like liquid fire. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, secured with a diamond clip that caught the light with every step. Her skin was flawless, her makeup sharp and striking, her lips painted a deep, lethal crimson. She didn't look like the girl who slept on a bed made of bricks. She didn't look like the girl who had spent 3 years smelling of soil and cheap soap. But her face, there was no mistaking that face. "No," Lucas whispered, his voice cracking. That's impossible." "Lucas," and asked, pulling on his arm. "What's wrong? You're shaking." Beside Nora walked Adrian Vance, looking every bit the formidable partner, his hand resting lightly and possessively on the small of her back. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, Nora's eyes swept over the crowd. For a fraction of a second, her gaze landed on Lucas. There was no warmth, no anger, no pain in her eyes. There was only nothing, as if she were looking at a speck of dust on the marble floor. The VIP lounge of the Drake Hotel was heavily guarded by security. Lucas had spent the last hour trying to push his way through, his face pale, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. His father, Harold, was furious, demanding to know why his son was acting like a madman. "Lucas, control yourself," Harold hissed as they waited in the corridor. "The Bell representatives said the president will see us now. This is our only chance. If you embarrass us—" "I need to see her," Lucas muttered, his eyes bloodshot. I need to see her face. The heavy oak doors opened. Julian Vance, the assistant, stepped out and nodded. The president will see the Hart Group delegation now. Only Mr. Harold Hart and Mr. Lucas Hart. Lucas pushed past his father and stepped into the room. The office was quiet, lit by the warm glow of a fireplace. Nora sat behind a massive glass desk, her fingers elegantly tracing the rim of a crystal glass filled with amber liquid. Adrian Vance stood behind her, his arms crossed, watching the door like a hawk. Nora, Lucas breathed, taking a step forward. It's you. It's really you. Lucas, his father snapped, confused. Do you know Miss Bell? Nora did not rise. She leaned back in her chair, a cool, polite smile on her lips. Mr. Hart, please sit down. Nora, what is this? Lucas's voice trembled. He looked at her designer dress, her diamond jewelry, the sheer, suffocating luxury that surrounded her. The flower shop, the basement, you lied to me? You were a billionaire's daughter this whole time. I didn't lie, Lucas, Nora said, her voice smooth and melodic, devoid of the soft, hesitant tone she used to have. I told you my father was dead to me. And he was. Until I realized that living with a corpse is much more profitable than living with a rat. Harold Hart looked between his son and Nora, his businessman's mind quickly piecing together the terrifying puzzle. Lucas, what did you do? Nora, listen to me, Lucas said, ignoring his father, stepping closer to the desk. I can explain. The 10 million, it was just a test. I wanted to see if we could get through one more hardship together. I was going to marry you, I swear. I love you. You love me? Nora tilted her head, a soft, genuine laugh escaping her lips. It was a beautiful sound, but to Lucas, it sounded like ice cracking. She opened the drawer of her desk and pulled out a sleek, black tablet. She slid it across the glass surface. The screen was open to a group chat. Make it $10 million. Otherwise, that flower shop girl will pay it all off in one go again, and where's the fun in that? Mr. Hart really knows how to play. No wonder you never get tired of her. Lucas's blood ran cold. The color completely drained from his face. You saw, he whispered. I saw everything, Lucas, Nora said softly. The Cayman accounts. The luxury yacht bought with my grandmother's house. The high-yield portfolio funded by my mother's wedding savings. And, of course, the watch on your wrist. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his with a terrifying, piercing intensity. But most of all, I saw the security footage of Central Street from 9 months ago. Lucas felt his knees weaken. Nora, the men who trampled Milo to death. Nora's voice finally lost its polite veneer, dropping into a cold, lethal whisper that vibrated through the room. They were on your payroll. You watched it through binoculars from your Mercedes. You let them kill my only family, just so I would cry in your arms and pay your rent. Harold Hart gasped, turning to his son in absolute horror. Lucas, you did this? To the Bell Group's heiress? I didn't know. Lucas screamed, tears finally spilling over his eyes. He reached out to grab Nora's hand, but Adrian Vance stepped forward instantly, his hand clamping down on Lucas's wrist with bone-crushing force. Touch her, Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet, and you won't leave this room on your feet. Lucas winced, pulling his hand back, looking at Adrian with a mixture of rage and terror. Who the hell are you? I am her fiancé, Adrian said, his eyes cold. And the man who has spent the last 3 weeks buying up 40% of your family's outstanding debt. Chapter 9. The Ledger of Ruin. Harold Hart's chest heaved. What did you say? Nora picked up a document from her desk and slid it over. The Hart Group's maritime proposal, Nora said, her voice returning to its calm, businesslike tone. It is denied. Furthermore, Bell Maritime Logistics has officially terminated all third-party leasing agreements with Hart Shipping, effective immediately. You can't do that, Harold cried, his voice cracking with desperation. That's illegal. We have a contract. We bought the port authority that holds your licenses, Mr. Hart, Adrian explained smoothly. We found several structural irregularities in your shipping manifests. Smuggling, tax evasion, and unregistered offshore transfers. The federal authorities were notified 2 hours ago. Nora, please. Lucas fell to his knees, grabbing the edge of her desk. I'll give it back. The house, the wedding fund, everything. I'll pay you 10 million, 20 million. Just don't do this to my family. With what money, Lucas? Nora asked, leaning over the desk to look down at him. Your accounts have been frozen. Your father's company will file for actual bankruptcy by tomorrow morning. And this time, there is no flower shop girl to sell her soul to save you. She stood up, her long red gown pooling around her feet like blood. You called me stupid 517 times in our chat history, Lucas, she said, looking down at his pathetic, weeping form. You thought I was poor, so you thought I was worthless. You thought my sincerity was a weakness you could exploit for your amusement. She took off her diamond ring, the engagement ring Adrian had given her, and let it catch the firelight. "This ring is worth $5 million, she said. "I could buy Central Street 10 times over. But do you know what the most expensive thing I ever owned was?" Lucas shook his head, his face covered in tears and sweat. "It was my sincerity," Nora whispered. "And you threw it in the trash. Now you get to live in the trash." She turned her back on them. "Julian, show them out. They are trespassing on Bell property."
Nora.
"Nora, please. I love you. Nora." Lucas's screams echoed down the corridor as security dragged him and his pale, silent father out of the VIP lounge. A year later, the autumn wind in Chicago was brisk, carrying the scent of rain and fallen leaves. On a quiet hill overlooking the lake, inside the private estate of the Bell family, stood a small, beautifully kept garden. In the center of the garden, beneath a young maple tree, was a small stone plaque. "Milo, safe at last." I knelt beside the plaque, placing a single, white rose on the grass. There were no thorns on this rose. I had trimmed them myself, carefully, with steady, unhurried hands. My fingers were no longer calloused or scarred. They were smooth, adorned with a simple, elegant band of platinum. A pair of warm hands settled onto my shoulders. I didn't flinch. I leaned back into the solid, comforting chest of Adrian. "The lawyers called," Adrian said softly, his breath warm against my ear. "The Hart Group's assets have been completely liquidated." Lucas Hart's appeal was denied. He was sentenced to 8 years for fraud and tax evasion. I stared at the white rose. "And his mother's yacht?" "Sold at auction," Adrian smiled. "I bought it. I renamed it the Milo. I thought you might want to use it for a honeymoon." I let out a soft, genuine laugh, turning in his arms to look up at him. For a long time, I had believed that love was about sacrifice, about bleeding yourself dry so someone else could stay warm. I had believed that if I suffered enough, I would be rewarded with a home. But looking into Adrian's eyes that had never lied to me, eyes that respected my strength as much as they guarded my peace, I realized that love was not a debt to be paid. "Thank you, Adrian," I whispered. "For what?" he asked, brushing a stray lock of hair from my cheek. "For showing me that I didn't have to be stupid to be loved." He smiled, kissing my forehead gently. "You were never stupid, Nora. You were just a star that fell into the mud. I'm just glad I was the one who got to help you shine again." We stood together on the hill, hand in hand, as the autumn sun broke through the clouds, lighting up the garden in a brilliant, golden glow. The flower shop was gone. The basement was gone. But for the first time in my life, I was finally home.